Okay, there's a few more things I want to talk about today. So the stack was the main thing, but I'm also going to cover some issues of not issues. I'm going to cover some of the stuff we've decided around deployment. I'm going to cover a little bit of what we've kind of done. Let me think. Am I going to cover that stuff now? Yeah, I'll cover deployment now, and I'm going to cover some marketing stuff. So I just, this is just in the interest of sharing. You might find this immensely boring. This is very, very inside baseball. But if somebody kind of wants to come along and do something similar, I thought it's at least useful to let you know what choices we've made, why we've made them. We've done this kind of stuff in our service business a few times. This is reasonably good. So thing one that we are using for deployment, we're building our code in the cloud with something called Bitbucket pipelines. So Bitbucket is, let me just think, can I bring this up? Here we go. So Bitbucket is the place where we host our repositories, and Bitbucket pipelines is the ability to build the code and run the tests when we commit to our cloud source code repository. So you can see here, we've got that set up. There's been sort of 10 commits. One of them failed, most of them successful. If you're not used to continuous integration, I would highly recommend you start a project like this. So the first thing our dev team have been doing is they have been working hard, Ricardo and Suzanne, to get this kind of end-to-end pipeline. I'm a massive fan of putting in continuous integration from the start, getting the standards in terms of what you want to do with your linting, which is kind of checking your code written the way you want it to be, getting your unit tests running really early, and then that just means you start off on the right foot. You basically never let the code get into bad shape. So that's what we've been using, Bitbucket pipelines. Bitbucket from Atlassian is an alternative to GitHub. I guess we prefer it for various reasons internally because we use Jira. That's one reason. There's slightly better integration. But you could use, there are other continuous integration solutions are available. So next one is Netlify. So talking about end-to-end stuff, one of the other things I like to do really early is I really, really like to get something deploying into production or into a pre-production, a test environment, but live, right? I'm a massive, massive fan of integrating end-to-end as early as possible. Integration is just one of these things which is, it's just risk. It's risk in any development project. And if you leave risk late in a project, it's very hard to recover. So one of the things that the team has done over the last couple of days is they have worked to take a bunch of our decisions about how we're going to build stuff and try and put a rough version together so that now when we make changes to the code, it can deploy all the way to live. And what amazing, fantastic, incredible solution have we deployed to live? Well, I will show you here. So this is what Netlify is. This is where we're hosting our static website. And our static website, what does that mean? Static website. Well, a static website is a website which basically has static files, JavaScript files, HTML files, CSS files, and it doesn't do any computation on the server. So you remember back to let me go back. If you remember back to this diagram of our stack, our React.js is eventually going to speak to an API, is eventually going to speak to an Express server. Well, what Netlify gives you is it gives you the top two boxes here. It gives you the ability to have a web server. It doesn't have Redis as a cache. It doesn't have caching, but it has the web server, and it has whatever you give it. So it could be a standard web page, or it could be a JavaScript. It could be a JavaScript file, and that JavaScript file can be a React app, so it can be a client-side app. So although it's kind of dynamic in the sense that you can interact with it, it's not a kind of fixed web page. Because it's all running on the client, it's all running in your browser, you can just deploy one of these React web apps straight to a solution like Netlify. And the thing I really like about Netlify, I'm not on commission for Netlify. There are other solutions like this, but what I really like about this is it's absolutely, anybody can get this working. It's a very low technical bar, and once you set it up, essentially every time we deploy to a particular branch in our repository, it triggers a deploy and it does what it needs to get that out onto this endpoint here. And this endpoint here, I mean, there's nothing there. That's what it is. It's a hello world. You click this, it does nothing. This obviously looks pretty uninspiring. But what's important about this is that when we change code in here, this is our repository. When we change the code in the repository, by doing no other work, it will magically get packaged up and put together out onto this production server, which our production server is protected by a password. So that's pretty cool. I really like that. And I would highly recommend that you think about doing continuous deployment, that is, as early as possible. Now, slightly further down the line, obviously, we can't just deploy things into production if people are potentially using it. So we'll probably have a production server, a staging server, and a development server. But I strongly prefer to have at least staging and production be, well, clearly production has to be on the live internet, but I'd rather have staging in a live environment too. So we'll probably end up using, it's a difficult one to say, when we eventually move over to AWS or whatever, we may end up with all of our stack out on both staging and production out on AWS. But in the short term, just getting something there, you can't really beat how simple Netlify is. And the other thing is, if you go back to our stack here, now we obviously had this Express server here running on Node.js, vending an API. Now, because we're not entirely sure what we're doing with Git, we did some investigation of the last couple of days with Git, and we have one potential avenue that might be a kind of a halfway house before we build all this stuff ourselves. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to put a kind of test server up. So another one of our projects here on Netlify is a test server, and you deploy that test server, and then that gives us basically a dummy API with mock data available to our React app, all running on the public internet. Now, you might be thinking, Matt, what are you talking about? You just went through and you told me that Netlify is for static sites, and then you've deployed a server to it. That doesn't make any sense. And that's true, it doesn't make any sense. But what they have is a concept called functions, and the functions are, I guess they're called Lambda functions. I don't really, if you're non-technical, I don't really want to go into this. If you're technical, it's like AWS Lambda. In fact, I think it is AWS Lambda underneath, but essentially it spins up a server for you on your behalf to run your little bit of JavaScript, and then spins the server down. Now, what we've been able to do is we've been able to write an Express server, which basically says if you get a request on this particular API endpoint, respond with this kind of canned data. And that's pretty cool. And what you can do with Netlify is you can essentially wrap that whole thing up so that it will do that on demand. So because it doesn't have to have any persistent state, it just kind of works. And you get this if you're on the kind of, not the free plan, but the second lowest plan on Netlify. You get this stuff, a certain amount, 100 minutes worth a month or something for free. So again, it's a great way to get out of the starting blocks, get something working, and you're effectively building the same API in Express just as a test server that you'll eventually use in your real solution. So that's pretty cool. We've got that working. I'm essentially extremely happy that we've got that done. So yeah, GitHub here. So deployment. So we did talk about internally, could we mock something up to stand in place for our Git service and our file systems in the short term. Now, the essential problem with this is if we want to be able to store things in repositories, what we have to have running is a persistent file system. Git works by writing to the disk and then by synchronizing that Git system with a remote Git system, but you still have to write to the disk. Now, what we've discovered just today is that GitHub actually has an API that potentially we could write a wrapper around that API and replace the bottom of our stack. So the whole Git service, talking to Git, talking to file system servers, we could potentially do that as an in-development kind of interim solution and use GitHub's API to do that. Clearly, when we go to deployment, we're not going to do that. We're going to have our own version of this stack. I'm not sure how much effort it's going to be to try and put this in place, but what it would do is it would allow us to move away from a mock API at the Express layer and actually use a real API that spoke to an actual persisted Git file system. So that's a maybe. We'll have a look at that. And then AWS, we'll probably end up hosting this on AWS. We have a bit of experience in that. The clever chap who would be doing this for us, Phil, is currently on his summer vacation in Canada. He doesn't know anything about this. When he gets back, I will tell him, hey, Phil, try and figure out how to do a Git file system on AWS, please. At which point he will probably go, why are you doing that? But that's our deployment plans. Let's move on. Let's change gears. Let's go to marketing. Not my happy place. The deployment plan is probably more my happy place than marketing. But I've been, I'm embracing it, right? So what have we done since the Monday when we recorded that video? Well, we got the video onto YouTube. So let me just quickly show you what we have with YouTube. Here's our analytics. It's going to take a minute to load this in. We've had 49 views, watch time of 310 minutes, and it kind of breaks down like this. So this is pretty cool. One thing I just wanted to, the reason I'm showing you this is not to boast about our fully almost 50 views. I just want to kind of draw attention to this here, which is the audience retention for less than 6 minutes on a 28-minute video. So what that tells me is potentially our videos, the video I made the other day is a bit too long. This video might be getting to be a bit too long. So I'll probably see, we'll go for another few videos, see what the kind of average viewing is. We might make shorter videos. We might split the videos up. I don't know. If you have any opinions on this, like I say, let me know. That would be really useful. Squarespace, so we built a website. That website is here at getincubate.com. Please visit. If you remember, one of the questions we got was, can I sign up and be notified by email when new episodes come out? If you don't know what Squarespace is, you clearly haven't ever listened to a podcast, because they basically sponsor every podcast. They do not sponsor this one. So you can't go to squarespace.com/incubate and do anything to help us, but feel free to try. I like Squarespace just because I don't want to think about this website. I don't care right now about the website. I will care about it later. I had a quick look to see if there was, clearly we know how to build websites, see if there's any way to do this quicker than Squarespace. There is no way than using a tool like Squarespace or Wix or whatever to build this website. So I put one together. It's essentially just a template for the blog. You go to the home page and you see, what do you see? You see a list of the recent posts, of which there is only one. There'll be more here. You click on a post, you see some information about that post. You have a link to the video. This is all improving my accounts, which is good. And then there's a little menu here, which there's a contact screen, and then there's this thing here, subscribe, new post weekly, and you can put your email address here. So the person who asked me, can I sign up to be notified of this, I have linked this to MailChimp, so you can sign up. And to give you a sense of what, if you've never used Squarespace, let me see if I can do this. If I edit this, because it says new post weekly, I guess I'm not going to be able to do that because I'm probably not going to remember my email and password. So let's forget that for just now. But essentially what you can do with Squarespace is you can go in and edit this in that kind of WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get type way. And I'll change this new post weekly to be something. I should actually move this form all the way out to the home page because it's pretty buried there. So yep, that was dead easy. Did that in a couple of hours, got it launched. I will probably use this and put information that's outside the videos on this website, so it's worth coming along and having a look at that. MailChimp, I talked about MailChimp. MailChimp is basically a mailing list. I'm not using a mailing list for anything other than people who want to be notified about updates. If you want to be notified, because that's the best way to get an email when it comes out, then go and sign up. I've got no intention of doing anything nefarious, but MailChimp is pretty good about giving you the chance to opt out and having the appropriate mailing address if you want to send me something nasty in the post because I abuse your email address. I can give you my word, I will not be doing that. And then finally, social. So obviously we push this out on Twitter. We have a Twitter account. It's at Get Incubate as well. And then I pushed out on LinkedIn. And we got pretty good engagement on LinkedIn. I had sort of like 800 odd people view the post, significantly less on Twitter because obviously LinkedIn leverages my current network that I have personally, and Twitter, well, nobody knows about the @GetIncubate Twitter handle as of yet. So that's what we've done. That really is the bare minimum, I guess, in marketing. We will see as the audience grows what else we want to do here, but I just thought you may be interested in that. Now, oh gosh, I gave you a sneak preview of a design there. So the other thing that I said that we'd done today is we had created a design for the first screen. And this is really, if we're talking about what problems are facing you right now, the biggest problem by far that's facing me right now is that the dev team has kind of decided we know what we're building, we know how we're building it, we know roughly the features, fine, you got to tell us what it looked like. And that is not a kind of snap your fingers type job. If you go back to the point that Neil made, this is important. This is the real stuff, right? Figure out what people want to do, okay? And then figure out what a good and effective way to do that. That's all user experience design. That all takes time. These are people who are experts on this. So we can't just kind of like spit that out. And even when you've done all that, you should really test it with real users, with some wireframes, and then potentially with interactive prototypes. And then when you've all got that, you do a high fidelity design. That is a process that we follow many, many times. It's a great process. Please use that process. If you can't do that for whatever reason, you can do what I did and just put together a design. And here it is. Ta-da! So this is the first screen that we want to have. So this is effectively our spreadsheet pulled together into what it could look like in the product. Now, I know this is not the most inspiring thing you've ever seen. It's good enough for just now. And we will produce probably 4 or 5 or 6 screens worth of good enough designs for just now for us to get the dev team out, get running, and then we'll go back and we'll start thinking about how we do this in a more considered way. But I'll possibly do a different, what I'll probably do is I won't tell you how I came up with the design just now. I guess what I can say is we're using a component library and a design system, and I did not make up any of these UIs or these UI elements. I composed them, and I composed it in Keynote, if you really want to know. So that's kind of like a terrible indictment of how we're putting this together. Normally, you would have a talented designer do the research, and then they would put something together in Sketch, which is the tool we use rather than Photoshop, and then they would export it via a tool called Zeppelin we use, which lets the developers have an understanding of all what the colors actually are and the assets. But instead, we have put this together, and if you have any feedback on this, and then please do let me know. We're not going to go into it in detail. This is essentially where you can see what it is. It implements the kind of seeing all the features. There's some filtering on the left-hand side. There's the ability to add a feature, and there's some breadcrumbing and navigation. And that's what the team are going to be working towards over the next few days. And for my part, what will I be doing next? Well, I need to put more screens together. So we have more capability to build at the moment than we have things for people to build. So I need probably another 3 or 4 screens. I'll try and work with them. I do want to go back and continue my research, do better research and more detailed research. Maybe I want to cover I want to look in a bit more depth at jobs to be done, and maybe I'll cover that in an upcoming video. And we need to add more detail into the features. At the moment, we're really not doing here's an indictment. We're doing a really terrible product management job. I am doing a really terrible product management job at the moment. I'm trying to do a little bit too many things at the same time. And the thing that's really suffering is proper product management. So I want to get some more detail into this. If we look at what let me just bring up. This is inside the sausage factory, right? So here's our board. This in the done column, there's a lot of stuff around investigation, getting stuff running end to end, etc., etc. And then you come into a feature like I can view a list of features. So let's see here we go. Here is the tickets, and I've put some acceptance criteria. Essentially, I put it together design, and then I listed acceptance criteria like The add feature brings up a modal, clicking the feature disclosure, shows a feature details panel, can be ordered by priority feature, epic, or user role. So we should really be thinking about all of this from a product management perspective. This is really just a kind of development, this is just a development unblocking approach to product management here. But I want to go back and I want to think about this in more detail. The fourth thing that I want to try and look at next, before the next video, is I've got a question mark, user screener, or user interview screener, that should possibly say. I do feel that because we've done such a kind of internalized process here, the very least nod we can do to what we actually believe in terms of user research is we can try and get some actual potential users to give us some feedback just now. How do you do that? Well, you do some user interviews with potential users. We might like to go through and I guess investigate what their current problems are. Maybe we'll look at jobs to be done and then speak to them about that. Maybe we'll do a storyboard, whatever the case might be. That starts with identifying who you want to speak to, and that process starts by doing some sort of screener which says these are the type of people we'd like to speak to. So I might try and have a think about that. It's kind of 50-50 whether I'll be able to do that before the end of this week, which means it's probably going to be put off a couple of weeks. But if I can get that done and out, then I can possibly be recruiting people to speak to whilst I'm away next week. And then finally, the last thing I have to do is I have to pack, because I'm getting on a plane at 6 in the morning on Saturday. So I need to be on top of all of this. I need to have all the screens and the tickets ready for people to work on. Ideally, you've got the screeners out, and then I need to leave. And that is it for the day 3 Incubate video. You can get in touch with me on Twitter. I'm at Matt Ferrugia. That's MattFarrugia. Those were a lot of letters, weren't they? And then, or you can follow the Incubate account, which is just at GetIncubate. Or you can go to the website, which is getincubate.com. Please do, if you're watching this video, please do, I guess, what do people say on YouTube? They say like the video, subscribe to the channel, and please leave us a comment. And on that last one, please do get in touch and tell us what you'd like to see, what you didn't like, ask us questions. If there's an area you'd like us to look at in more detail, then this is your opportunity. Please do it. And until next time, goodbye.